North Korea's famine killed up to 3 million people in the 1990s, while its southern neighbor became one of the world's fastest-growing economies through open markets. In one country, the state planned every plate. In the other, families chose their own. The results weren't just different, they were life or death. What happens when you pick your own plate? You walk into a buffet, no one tells you what to take. You're free to stack your plate with dumplings, avoid the salad, or load up on desserts. That freedom may look chaotic, but it's how real economies thrive. A free market works the same way. Every individual decides what to buy, what to sell, and how much it's worth. The result? Prices shift constantly based on what people actually want. No central authority needs to control every dish. Supply and demand take care of that. In 1980s Hong Kong, street vendors competed on every corner. One stall might sell fish balls, another pineapple buns. If demand dipped, they switched menus overnight. That's how small food stands became full-scale restaurants, some of which are now global chains. No central planner told them what to make. Customers did. Compare that to 1970s Poland, where food was rationed by the communist state. Meat shortages were common, lines stretched for hours, and stores often had only vinegar left on the shelves. Even when people had money, they couldn't always find food. Why? Because the government guessed demand years in advance and got it wrong. The beauty of the buffet isn't just variety, it's efficiency. If no one eats the baked beans, they vanish from tomorrow's menu. But if spring rolls disappear fast, more get prepared. Feedback is instant. In economics, this is called a price signal, and it's the secret ingredient that keeps markets responsive. In the free market, failure isn't punished by force. It's punished by being ignored. That forces producers to improve, adapt, or vanish, just like a buffet dish that no one touches. But here's the twist. No one controls the buffet's full outcome, and yet it works better than most meal plans. Why central planning feels like cafeteria lunch. Picture a long line of kids holding identical trays. The food isn't chosen, it's handed to them. One scoop of boiled carrots, a rectangle of reheated meat, and milk. No seconds, no swapping, no say. This is the school lunch of economics, central planning. Under central planning, a government decides what to produce, how much to produce, and how to distribute it. Sounds organized, right? But history shows that even the best-laid plans collapse when forced to feed millions with one decision. In the Soviet Union, food was allocated using 5-year plans. These weren't adjusted for weather, crop failure, or changing diets. In 1972, a poor harvest forced the USSR to buy grain from the United States, a capitalist nation they politically opposed. By the 1980s, the average Soviet consumer spent 2 to 3 hours per day in food queues. Even worse was North Korea during the arduous march of the 1990s, a centrally controlled ration system. Once the pride of the regime collapsed, famine followed. Up to 3 million people died between 1994 and 1999. Citizens survived by illegally trading rice in black markets, something the state called economic treason. In Cuba, government ration books called libretas are still in use. Introduced in 1962, they assign basic goods: rice, beans, cooking oil. In theory, it's fair. In practice, the food often arrives late or not at all. As of 2023, the average monthly ration includes just 5 eggs, 1 pound of chicken, and 2 ounces of coffee per person. The tragic irony? Central planners promise equality, but deliver scarcity. Everyone gets the same tray, but that tray is limited, delayed, and often cold. And here's the paradox: even when central planners want to serve people, they're too far away to hear what they're hungry for. Next, we'll uncover how incentives, not orders, make meals tastier, prices smarter, and businesses faster than any plan on paper. How incentives spice up the menu. Why do buffets keep getting better? Because every dish fights for your attention, and your choice is the reward that drives improvement. That's the power of incentives. And in economics, incentives aren't just nice, they're everything. In a free market, businesses compete to attract you. If you love something, they make more of it. If you ignore it, they stop. This loop creates better food, faster service, and endless innovation. No meetings, no memos, just hungry people and smart sellers. Look at South Korea's food economy. After embracing free market reforms in the 1960s, it went from a war-ravaged nation to one of the world's top 15 economies. Today, Seoul's street food scene blends old traditions with TikTok-worthy fusions. Kimchi tacos, mozzarella corn dogs, tteokbokki in a dozen flavors. Why? Sellers react daily to customer trends. The better they perform, the more they earn. Now compare that to East Germany, where bakeries produced bland, uniform loaves with no real competition. Even into the 1980s, citizens waited in lines for state-assigned bread with little variety or taste. Productivity lagged, innovation stalled. Why would a baker improve if their salary stayed the same whether customers loved or hated the bread? Fast food history offers another lens. The Big Mac was invented in 1967, not by McDonald's HQ, but by a franchise owner in Pittsburgh named Jim Delegati. He saw a local craving and met it. Within a year, it was on menus nationwide. The McChicken, the Whopper, the Zinger, all born from market competition, not a central kitchen. And here's the hidden truth. Competition isn't just about profit, it's about feedback. When every dollar is a vote and every plate cleared is a signal, sellers listen. Now we'll explore how free markets adapt to failure, while central plans keep repeating the same recipe even if nobody eats it. Why Buffets self-correct, but bureaucracies rot. At a buffet, if nobody touches the tuna casserole, it vanishes the next day. If the dumplings disappear in 15 minutes, the chef makes more. That's feedback. That's adaptation. That's a free market at work. And that's exactly what central planning can't do. In a market economy, mistakes get fixed fast because losing money forces change. But under central planning, there's no penalty for failure. Bureaucrats don't go out of business, and the system keeps cooking the same inedible dishes. Take the Soviet shoe factory problem. In the 1980s, factories were rewarded not for quality, but for quantity. So they made millions of small, identical shoes, often the wrong size. Stores filled with products no one could wear. This wasn't laziness, it was bad incentives. Workers followed the plan, even when the plan made no sense. Meanwhile, in India, economic liberalization in 1991 opened the door for private industries to flourish. Previously, government factories dominated, but they were slow and unresponsive. Post-liberalization, India's textile exports quadrupled within a decade. Companies adapted to international demand, adjusted prices, and diversified styles, all things central planners struggled with. Even during COVID-19, you could see the difference in how systems responded. In the US, distilleries pivoted to making hand sanitizer within days. Private factories retooled to produce masks. In contrast, many state-run healthcare systems bound by rigid procurement laws faced PPE shortages for months. In planned economies, when something fails, you often need a political revolution to fix it. In markets, failure is just part of the menu. Products fail, services flop, but they get replaced fast. One Soviet joke summed it up: they pretend to pay us, so we pretend to work. That was the legacy of a system where failure never disappeared, because there was no incentive to make it disappear. Now, we'll see what happens when the buffet vanishes completely, and who eats when the shelves are empty and the lines don't move. When the buffet closes, who gets to eat? When the buffet shuts down, there's no line to stand in, just chaos. Scarcity isn't theoretical. It's hunger, panic, and desperation. And history shows that when central planning collapses, it's the poorest who suffer most. In Venezuela, once the richest country in South America, the government seized control of food production in the early 2000s. By 2016, supermarkets were bare. Families waited 6-10 hours in ration lines. Basic items like flour, rice, and milk became black market luxuries. Inflation skyrocketed. By 2018, it hit 130,000%. That year alone, over 4 million people fled the country. Parents fed their children sugar water and fried banana peels to survive. In Sudan, the economic collapse of 2023, fueled by civil conflict and inflation, shut down imports. Markets once bustling with goods became battlegrounds. The price of bread tripled in weeks. In Khartoum, locals turned to bartering clothing and electronics just to buy food. Even Argentina, a country once as wealthy as France, has battled inflation and food shortages repeatedly. In 2023, the inflation rate surpassed 115%, and supermarkets began locking basic staples like meat behind glass. Prices changed hourly. Some families spent half their income on groceries alone, despite government price controls. And during North Korea's arduous march of the 1990s, government rations fell below 300 calories per person per day. Famine killed up to 3 million. It wasn't a natural disaster, it was the result of centralized control collapsing. Ironically, people survived by doing the forbidden, trading in underground markets. Here's the cruel paradox. When systems break, markets often save lives. People create shadow economies, swapping rice for labor, cigarettes for medicine. In every country facing collapse, it's individual action, not government plans, that feeds people in the end. Now we'll ask the big question. Can we have the freedom of a buffet with the safety of a lunch program? The answer might surprise you. Can you have a buffet with safety nets? What if the buffet let everyone choose, but made sure no one went hungry? This isn't fantasy, it's how mixed economies operate, and history proves it works. In Singapore, one of the world's most market-driven economies, street hawker centers serve millions every day. Dishes cost as little as $2.50 USD because the government subsidizes hygiene infrastructure, rents, and licenses. But hawkers compete fiercely, updating menus, innovating flavors, and responding to demand. The result? A dynamic food economy ranked by UNESCO as an intangible cultural heritage of humanity. Meanwhile, Sweden and Norway, often mistaken for socialist states, actually run free market economies with strong safety nets. Healthcare is universal, but hospitals are decentralized. Schools receive public funding, but parents choose where to send children. In Sweden, private companies even run some hospitals and schools, but the state covers costs to ensure no one is excluded. In the United States, the market reigns, but public support systems exist. SNAP, food stamps, serves over 42 million Americans, and school lunch programs feed 30 million children daily. Yet companies still compete, innovate, and scale. The tension between personal freedom and public responsibility plays out on every plate and every ballot. The real lesson? You don't need to eliminate choice to create fairness. Countries like Germany blend public health insurance with private clinics. Japan uses government-set price limits on medicine while encouraging private competition among doctors. Historically, these hybrid models outperform extremes. They keep incentives alive, promote innovation, and support the vulnerable. They act like buffets, but with guardrails. You can skip the broccoli, but no one is forced to starve. Here's the twist. Mixed economies aren't perfect, but they're resilient. When things go wrong, recessions, pandemics, wars, they bend but rarely break. And when they do, people still have the freedom to adapt. You don't need central control to care for people. You just need a system that trusts them to choose and supports them when they fall. You've just seen how food can reveal everything about freedom and failure. If you want to explore more hidden truths behind everyday systems, tap on the screen now. Subscribe to stay fed with real stories most people never notice.